Good afternoon, I'm Ben Wheeler and it is Friday the 21st of February. I'm here in Sydney on the beautiful land of the Gadigal people and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We've got a lot coming up on the show today. We're going to be talking about the 4-day working week. So it's certainly gaining some momentum. We're joined by Christian Miran, who is a work revolution architect at Thrive Nation. Also, we're going to look at why employees are looking to make a change. So we've got the detail around 67% of employees considering a job change in 2025. We've got our latest job section. And lastly, we will reveal our social media poll results, where we ask the question, what will be the top priority for HR leaders in 2025? So let's get into it with the 4-day working week. So this is our survey from last week, which is, do you think more employers will shift to a 4-day working week? Well, you voted very conclusively, 76.6% yes. So here to talk about it is Christian. Hello, Christian. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So we've just shown it's certainly gaining some momentum. It's been sort of behind the scenes for a while, but it feels like it's coming to the fore. Everyone wants to know a bit more about it. Why do you think it's now coming up now more than ever?
Well, I think, when you look at the numbers globally of what's happening in the context of mental well-being, people's reported burnout, those sort of figures are on the rise. And people are finding not only the economic challenges, but the stress of everyday life more challenging, which does have an impact in the workplace. And looking at certain sectors and industries, there's just a lot more competing pressures on organisations, which means that pressure does inevitably get back to the people that are driving those businesses. And I think people and organisations are looking now, those figures really do not surprise me at all, because they need to find new ways of finding productivity. The labour productivity growth chart has been on the decline since over the last 20 years. And it's probably at one of the lowest points we've seen now than ever before. And I think organisations and people are needing to find new ways of working to really find that extra step in their business.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I was just thinking about, I was listening to a podcast, I think it was around when, might have been Henry Ford with the change from 6 days to 5 days, and everyone was terrified to lose productivity, but obviously showed that it was not something that was going to push it back, actually increase. So I wonder if it's one of those moments where we look at and think, yeah, it works, but it's obviously a change. I know you've done a pilot most recently with a fairly big organisation and you implemented that. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so at my time working at Medibank, we introduced the 4-day work week, and how that model worked wasn't a compressed work week, but rather people got paid 100% of the pay for 80% of the time, but 100% of the work being completed. And that's a really important part of this. It's not a compressed work week. You're not trying to cram more in. You're saying to your team, and in that model, that, hey, if you get all your things done, if you get your work done, and we're still tracking well as a business, then we'll be able to afford you this gift of time, which is essentially how that model worked. And through that experience, Medibank, like many other organisations, looking for ways to retain people. It is a competitive talent market, and they recognise the importance of having a way to differentiate themselves as an employer. But they also recognise the importance of creating space and time and the impact on that for people's health and well-being. So it was advantageous for the business, but they also looked at the individual lens of their workforce and said, how can we make an impact to them? And they saw some really terrific results.
Mm-hmm. And with the challenges in implementing that, did you get much sort of initial pushback? Obviously, that's a huge organisation. There's a lot to get through. But what are some of the hurdles you came up against? I'm guessing it wasn't kind of we're doing it next day. We're through the implementation.
There is definitely challenges. I mean, this isn't an easy thing to tackle. I mean, people have been working part-time for a long time, particularly, mums that have returned back to the workplace, and more recently, parents in general are adopting for part-time work, which is great to see. So part-time isn't necessarily new, but when you're talking about doing it at scale, that is a different challenge. And, some of the challenges was obviously, how do you make sure that you don't lose productivity? That's always the number one thing for CEOs and for executives, is how do you make sure that you're going to get the benefits of this and not lose your customers or lose your business. And so we set out to really set out a bit of a hypothesis and framed it as a bit of an experiment. So we said, this isn't necessarily a permanent way of working change. We're going to trial it. We're going to test it. If we can maintain our productivity, plus give the benefit of doing this for our team, that will mean that the experiment's a success, but it only comes at the keeping productivity at the same level.
Yeah, and I think that sounds like it's got to across it works for business, it works for staff, it works for everybody, but yeah, it's looking at both sides, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were really structured with how we had taken that approach to measuring the impact of that, and we could really visibly see which performance levers, if you like, were driving, and how did that change. And we looked at 3 different dimensions. One, business performance. How were we going in maintaining our revenue and maintaining our customer satisfaction? Second lens was, how did managers feel that their people were performing? How were they going? And we got their feedback. And then the third level was the individual level. And, this stuff's been reported, their numbers have been reported in the media, but things like nearly a 30% improvement in sleep, overall health being improved by 16%, eating habits improved by nearly 18%. So when you look at some of those factors, that's a massive impact on people's health and well-being. And they've also reported some really good results on their productivity. Not without its challenges, but certainly worth looking at.
What are some of the common myths? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but what would you say when you talk about 4-day working week and you get people saying, oh, well, it won't work because of this, or you probably heard it all. What are some of the ones that have come up?
It's a really interesting one, Ben, because I think in some ways our culture is geared around being busy and hustling and getting lots of things done. It feels really good to get lots of things done off your to-do list. And when you're talking about making a change like this, I think one of the first myths you're breaking is, hey, doing everything on your to-do list might not be the right things that moves the business forward. So I think that's certainly something that you have to really talk to your team about, is what are the outcomes actually of the work? Because that's what you're making the decisions based on, not how many things have you done, how many meetings have you gone to, how many committees have you been a part of. Those things really don't move the needle on what's most important for your business. So that's definitely one. The second one is that there's certain roles that this would apply to, and there's certain roles that it wouldn't. And in the Medibank trial and in other trials, there's definitely cases to show that, hey, this actually has application across different types of jobs. It's not just people that work in the back of house or in corporate that could benefit from this. There's lots of research that shows that there's companies that have trialed it that have different types of working conditions in manufacturing. Lamborghini have actually done a trial. There was a police force in the US that did a trial, and they've actually made it a permanent adjustment. And there's applications that are happening across the hospital setting in healthcare too. So there's lots of different industries that this could work in, and I think the data is sort of showing that.
And I think from listening to what you're saying around productivity, I can imagine that could be people worried about certainly business owners, that sort of thing. But it really does make you question, what are you doing? And I think that's like just, yeah, you're right. We're busy, 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 but actually what are we doing? And then and thinking about maybe that meeting isn't that important. It sounds like it'd be a good process for any business to go through to look at, right, this will force you to throw everything up and look at it again afresh.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's so much of what I believe in, this is why this is good for business, is it's going to force you to really see the opportunities in your business. It's going to, your team are going to say, hey, we could be more productive in this area, or I've got to go through these 5 steps of approval to get this thing done, or this technology is just not helping us get this thing done either. So you're going to find those opportunities by just being open to a new way of working. It really affords you an innovation lens that you might not have had in your business otherwise. That's probably the third myth, Ben, actually, I think it leads me into, is, I've heard from CFOs and CEOs, hey, well, our people should just be motivated enough. Like, why do they need to have a day off to be afforded to do these things? And there's something really interesting. We're not, in this type of work, you're not saying that people are not motivated. What you're saying is that with rest and time to recover, you're going to get better business performance. You're going to get better creative thinking. And, the Medibank data that's been reported sort of shows that as well. There's lots of other data that shows what happens when people are rested. They've got time to prepare things for their life. They've got time to go see loved ones that they wouldn't normally necessarily have to do, which means space and recovery time from work. And that has a really amazing impact on people's ability to perform in their jobs.
Well, I'm definitely interested, and there'll be many people. What is the best way to get? Where do you start with this? Do you think if your employers or someone's listening and I want to mention it to my employer, where's the starting point?
Yeah, well, I think the starting point is just trying to think about what in our culture could be the things where we've got opportunities to find that 20% of time, because that's essentially what you've got to be able to find. What are those opportunities to be more productive? And then looking at what are your people saying about their challenges in their life and in their work. Mm-hmm. When through the Medibank experience, and what I kind of have then since taken forward, is this idea that you want to design your workforce around your culture strategy and the way you're working around it works for your team and your organisation. So the way that one company applies it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in another context. So thinking about, approaching them with an open mind, and maybe what could be a really small experiment that you might be able to try. Could it be, hey, could we just find 2 hours every fortnight to have as a break? What would we take to do those sort of to take that opportunity? So I think experimentation is really what I'm getting at, and understanding if you're an executive or a CEO, talk to your team and understand what are their pain points and challenges of how they live and work.
And I imagine you could help us with it as well if it's something that, yeah, we're going to do it. That's obviously your role. So if anyone is interested to find out more, I'm sure they can reach out to yourself. We share your contact details. And thank you so much for joining us. We're really interested. I'm certainly interested to maybe try some of the baby steps you said. And we'll be watching over this year and see if it matches up with some of the stats we've got. And let's see if momentum keeps going.
Great. Well, I'm excited to talk to you then, Ben. Let's set up that time. But yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anyone that's really interested in how they could adopt this in their workplace.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
So This is by the numbers section. We're going to talk about some interesting stats that come around the changes for this year. So why 67% of employees are considering a job change. So the key takeaways that we've got for that is why people are looking to make the move. Well, 48% want higher pay and benefits. 34% want more flexible work options. So the key reasons people are looking to make that change. Within that, we also have some job satisfaction. So what is it at work that people are not happy with? 22% feel undervalued, and only 51%, which I thought was a very interesting stat, believe their pay is fair. So sort of linking back to wanting better pay and benefits. Regarding the workplace setup that people have, 47% are working on site and 45% have flexible or hybrid work arrangements. So here we have our job section, and also it will be linked to our latest market report, which is due to come out in the not too distant future. We've got a senior financial accountant, obviously in Queensland on an hourly rate basis, 75 to 80. The marketing specialist in Adelaide, 150,000 on a permanent basis. A customer service rep in Sydney, competitive salary. Please reach out to find more details. And the administrator role in Victoria at 76,000. That's it for our show today. We will have, as I said, our latest market report where we've done a lot of surveys, still sort of getting those finalised. It will be coming out shortly. Lots of stats to go to, so we look forward to bringing that to you in the next few months. Thank you for joining us.